Well, our next speaker is Julie McAllen. She is someone that is eminently qualified to speak on this subject. It's the need for humor in our recovery. And one of the things, I've known Julie a few years now, and one of the things I always appreciate about her is her ability to take something that's fairly serious, present it with humor, and still make the point beautifully. So Julie, come on up. She's speaking on the need for humor in our recovery.
Today's my birthday. Now that I'm 55 years old, and my father just passed away recently, I think a lot more about the hereafter. I find myself wandering from room to room in my house wondering, when am I hereafter? I told that joke for my mother. That's, hi, Mom. Yeah, I promised her I'd tell that. But anyways, the reason I'm giving this particular talk, I've given my testimony before at these conferences in Pennsylvania and here, and spoke on, serious subjects, but the last two times Bob introduced me, he introduced me as a clown. And I thought, well, maybe I should address that. Maybe I should talk about being a clown. So it's true, I am a literal fool for Christ. In the body of Christ, I get to be one of the funny bones, so I'm pretty happy about that. Some people know about that there are different types of clowns. I'm not really a gospel clown. I don't go into churches and teach Bible lessons with clown tricks. But because joy is a fruit of God's Spirit, I really believe that spreading joy is a ministry. So, yes, I do talk particularly about Jesus in certain situations, but you know what? You don't always have to. It's okay to minister to people and just relieve their tension with joy, and that is still ministering. I believe that. So God ministered to me through joy and humor and clowning, and so really I'm going to be talking somewhat about that. I'm not going to be heavy on apologetics so much, but I am going to be sharing scripture here. This weekend, we're going to hear a lot of scripture, a lot of apologetics, so I kind of feel like my talk maybe is providing the balance, So there was an example. This was another reason why I chose to talk on humor. In 2017, I was at the Pennsylvania conference, and I spoke on the book of Galatians and how it ministered to me and how I like to reason from that book with Jehovah's Witnesses. And I did a little skit on stage. I thought, well, I'll introduce a little humor into that, and I brought some clown noses, put them on Sharon, and Brian Pope came up on the stage, and I used some cheeses. Oh. I'm looking at this on the stage. It says, "Sir, we would see Jesus." Oh, that's very interesting. Anyways, I brought some cheese. I did a little illustration, and it was for so I could have a physical illustration of how adding works to grace is not the gospel, and it perverts the gospel. And so then I went into my talk. Well, unbeknownst to me, later when it was uploaded to YouTube, somebody had watched it, and we talked about how YouTube is a ministry. A girl that I went to middle school with had watched it, and I remembered her name, but I didn't know her well. She was shy, but we had talked through, she looked me up on Facebook, and she said, I was raised a Jehovah's Witness. I had no idea. And she said, you always made me laugh in school. And she said, I watched that where you were on stage with that clown nose, and she goes, I got it. And I thought, this is cool. This is cool. So the humor, the person God made me to be, the person that made someone laugh in middle school, it was like God confirming in me, yes, use your humor. That is your ministry, So I was really happy about that. So God used clowning as part of my healing process because He knitted me together in my mother's womb, right? So He put certain things in me, put certain things in others. So He knitted me together in my mother's womb. And you should know my mother. Everyone who meets my mother says, your mother's a hoot. So a little bit background. I knew growing up, my mother loved April Fool's jokes. when we would have guests, I remember she had this sandwich. It was a sponge. She had fake chocolates, and we always had the dribble glass. So I grew up as that kid delighting, like, this is how you entertain guests. Of course, you invite them over and watch them dribble all the stuff all in it. And it's like, so, and her mother, I heard from my father when he was dating her, my grandmother came out and said, Ralph, would you like some cookies? And they were dog biscuits covered with powdered sugar. So take pity on me. It's a generational curse. I can't help it, so pray for me, you know. So if my humor ever annoys me, you know that I come from that background. That's just my normal. So I was growing up in a non-JW home, so I had birthday parties and holidays and all that stuff. And I would say, and I learned this through Melissa Bramer, if anyone knows Melissa. She grew up JW, and we had a layover flying home from Pennsylvania. We kind of were sharing each other's childhood stories. And growing up JW, she had that pressure of, you know, meetings and going out in service and, you know, just that constant pressure. And I looked at her and I said, we had completely different childhoods, because my pressure was always, did you have fun? Did you have fun? Everything was about fun. And when I got the news this past Monday that my father had died, I was talking with my sister and I was asking, well, how's mom? And, you know, okay, I said, be sure to tell her I'm having fun and I went swimming every day, you know, because that's my mom. That's what makes her happy. So my influences, Carol Burnett, of course. I was a Mad magazine junkie, which also developed, you know, so there's humor, but also developed my artistic style. I'm a caricature artist, and so I was always looking at the way they drew the cartoons. So that's my childhood, drawing and just kind of goofing off. And I wanted to be a rock star too, Gary. I didn't know how to play an instrument. I couldn't sing, but people would ask me, what you want to be when you grow up? I'm going to be a rock star. Yeah. So, but I also wanted to work at Mad Magazine. So then later in life, I married another humorous person. Sharon can testify. My husband is very humorous, very intelligent, and an excellent cook. So then this is kind of neat. When we started our family, he set to work in building our home. And we have an unusual home. He built it round. We have bottles in our wall, and it's called cordwood. And you have these, you know, you just place the logs in mortar. And while he was building, and this would have been about the time I began to study with Jehovah's Witnesses, he had picked up one of the logs, and we hadn't discussed it. He's just telling me this afterwards, why it was in the wall. He picked it up and he thought, wow, it kind of looks like a smile, a clown smile. And so he intentionally made a nose and two eyes, so that clown is forever in the wall of our house. And that would have been placed about 1995. And it wasn't another 10 years later that I became a clown, that I went to clown camp and joined a clown club. So in a way, you know, God had placed in my house the healing process, just even as I was beginning to become a Jehovah's Witness. And so I look at that clown every morning in my living room and I go, yeah. So that was in place. Then as I, you know, became a witness, I became progressively serious. You know, you learn to be that. And plus, you are being trained to think a new way. You're constantly focused on the end of the world. You're constantly focused on imperfections. You know, everyone's pagan and worldly, and there's very little time to just enjoy God's creation, enjoy simple things. And even my own children growing up, you know, play was a little too excessive, you know. It's like you got to go to meetings and you got to learn to sit still and all this stuff. So, you know, I'm turning into this different person, and I'm really losing my identity, because my friends and family would have described me before as being very, you know, light, you know, just, oh yeah, you're easygoing and fun and all that stuff. So I was becoming very stressful and very depressed. And there was a particular instant after a 3-day district convention, you know, and with kids, you know, you're trying to keep them all calm and still there. And of course, every parent knows if you be good, well, on the way home, we'll get ice cream or something, right? So I promised them that we'd stop at this pizza joint on the way home. And I came in very stressed, and I gave the kids some quarters. They're running around, and there's this older gentleman at the pizza parlor. He was just there picking up a pizza. And he starts doing the thing, hey, what's that behind your ear? And he's pulling Tootsie Rolls out of my kids' ears. And they're giggling, and I'm thinking like, oh, that's nice, you know. And then he starts pulling balloons out of his pocket, and he's blowing up balloons. He's making these balloon animals, and they're just giggling. And my mind went back, because, like, you know, the wall starts coming down, like, oh, I'm away from the convention now. I can just relax. And my mind went back to a time when I was a kid, and my parents used to take me to a restaurant where I think it was a waiter, or maybe the cook in the back. It was a young guy, 19 maybe, and he came to the table and he was making us balloon animals, and I always wanted to go back to that restaurant. You know, it's just a happy memory. And I learned today he is a working magician. So, he developed his craft, but I was so relieved, and I remember thinking, my religion lied to me. I am watching genuine love right now. You know, this is a good thing, and I don't care what religion this man is. I don't care if he's an atheist or Muslim or Baptist or what. I just love this moment, you know. And I went up to him, I hugged him, I said, I don't know who you are, but thank you so much for entertaining my kids today, because I came into this pizza joint really stressed, and just watching you just relieved all that stress. And I hugged him, you know, and I'm a JW, and I hugged this pagan worldly guy, you know. And I pull away from the hug, and I see he's wearing a baseball cap, says Winona Clown Club. I'm like, are you a clown? He goes, yeah, I belong to a Winona Clown Club. I'm like, there's a clown club? And Winona is just a city, you know, half hour from me. I'm like, I didn't know there was a clown club. So that was another thing, you know. So I have a clown in my wall. I'm still a JW. I meet a clown, and all this is kind of building up like, gosh, you know, this little stirring, you know. Around the same time, I became a house cleaner, as all JW women usually do, and I had to think of a name for my business. And my name is Julie, and I thought, well, I should try to find a name that kind of sounds like either my first name or my last name. And I didn't want to portray that I was like somehow more sanitary than the house owner. I thought, what am I really doing? I'm freeing up their time. That's what I'm doing. And the word Jubilee came to mind. I thought, isn't that what kind of like the Jubilee is in the Bible? I don't know enough about this Jubilee. So I start looking it up, and I look it up in the Insight volumes that I had as a Jehovah's Witness. And I'm reading about it. I'm like, I love this thing, you know. And Leviticus 25, and I come to verse 10, and it talks about, I'm going to read that to you. Leviticus 25:10 is where I get my name from for my cleaning business first. So it says, You shall thus consecrate the 50th year and proclaim a release through the land to all its inhabitants. It shall be a jubilee for you, and each of you shall return to his own property, and each of you shall return to his family. And that, you know, the whole chapter, you know, was talking about this liberation. And I remember thinking, wow, Jehovah let even the land rest and the animals rest. And as a Jehovah's Witness, I was hungry for rest. I was like, when do we get to rest, you know? Because you're just on this constant cycle of the meetings and everything. And that idea of returning to my family, like, yeah, I felt like I was getting pulled away, you know, from my own identity and my family and all that stuff. So it was speaking to me. So these little things were falling into place. And then at that time, so that's just my cleaning name. I decided to call myself Jubilee Cleaners because it was Jubilee Cleaners, liberate yourself from housework. But then as a family, we went to a area festival, and there was jugglers and ventriloquists and, you know, just that festival atmosphere and, you know, petting zoo for the kids, and I just had a great time. And it just kind of stayed with me like, I want to be there. You know, I want more of that. And that was a Saturday, and Sunday morning I woke up, went to the Kingdom Hall as usual, and I was bored out of my skull. I thought, there's no life here, you know? And when the meeting was over, I'm, walking through all the socializing afterwards, and a sister said, what are your afternoon plans? And it just came out of my mouth. I said, I'm going to see my people. And I went back to that festival, and I went alone, and I was like in prayer mode, like, I don't know, just this whole, I walked around and I was like envisioning myself to be there, that I'm going to be one of the entertainers here. These are my people. This is my clan. 1 year later, I was a caricature artist there, because that was the year I decided I'm just going to try this, because I was always a cartoonist, and I would make up people, and I had a neighbor that had encouraged me, I think you could do caricatures, and so I started to do it that summer. So I was there, and I have more about things like that. What you envision and, really pray toward and hope towards, you can achieve it. So that was a real marker, and it gave me a confidence that there might be life outside of the Watchtower. And I was also still a JW when a parent at school, my children were still in grade school, they were organizing a school carnival. And she asked, knowing my personality, that, do you think you could maybe play a clown? And I'm like, yeah, because, I grew up, my favorite holiday was Halloween, because you didn't deal with the food. I didn't like Thanksgiving because it's all about just baking this turkey. And Sharon knows, do I cook well? No, I don't like to cook. I have never made a turkey. And I leave that to my husband. Anyways, the chance to dress up was always like, oh, cool, So I slapped this clown thing together. And I do the clown at the school carnival, and the kids enjoyed it, I enjoyed it. But my concern was, I don't know if I'm doing this right. I don't know if I do the makeup right. And all I had was a rainbow wig from the dime store, It's like, where do clowns buy their stuff and all that, So that was swirling around. And I was invited back year after year to be this clown. Then my daughter was in 5th grade. And they had at the local technical college this college for kids. And they let kids sign up for some classes. Some were like, what would it be like to be a doctor, and learn to sew and that. So she signed up for 3 classes. And I noticed that there was also Clowning 101, which she didn't take. But I thought, well, if I was a 5th grader, I'd be taking that, So the parents were invited for this little, coffee and donut introduction, and listen to what the day will be like for your kids. And then, parents, you are allowed to be dismissed, go shopping, whatever, and we have your kids till 3 o'clock. And I was going to just, leave. And then they said, well, if you want to shadow your child, you may go into the classroom with them. And I watched the little clown wannabes go off to their classroom, and I just followed them in. My kid wasn't there. I just thought, okay, they'll just think I'm one of their moms. So I sat in the back of the room, and Bonzo the clown put on his makeup and talked about being a clown, and telling about, that humor, you don't want to insult people. I work hard on that. But it's always back on yourself. You play the joke on yourself, But the thing that really got me, he's putting on the makeup and he's covering all his skin. He says, when you're with children, there's that fine line, usually around age 7. They don't know the difference between fantasy and reality, That's why you can tell them about Santa Claus and things like that. And so when you're a clown, you're a walking cartoon. And so you have to cover up remnants of who you are. Like if you're wearing a wristwatch, don't use your own voice, all of that stuff. And he's saying, when you're the clown, you be that clown and you stay in character. You are a walking cartoon. And that was like, this is where the apologetics come. The Word became flesh. It's like, I not only get to draw the cartoon, I get to be the cartoon. I'm like, that just locked it in. I was like, wow. And he talked about this clown camp. And I had vaguely heard of this clown camp before in La Crosse, Wisconsin. I live half hour from La Crosse. I'm like, that happens every year. There's a clown camp. He goes, oh yeah, they come from all over, out of the country and everything. I'm like, really? I said, can anyone go to that? Or you gotta be like a working clown. He goes, no, even if you have a passing interest in it, here's the website. And I hesitated on it. I'm like, I'm still a JW, but I was fading at that point. I was like in that in-between place. So I was like, oh, because when you're a JW, you're afraid to think for yourself. This is something simply for my pleasure. You don't do that. It's like, oh, I'm bad. So I'm going through all that, guilt of being a JW, but it's like, I want this, So I didn't sign up right away. I'd hesitate. then I'd look at the price and go, I can't afford that. And so it just kind of was on the back burner a little bit. Then, where did I leave off? So when I was the clown at the grade school, I called myself Jelly Bean, but when I finally signed up for clown camp, I thought, what does a clown do? It's kind of like the housework thing. I can't really heal people as a clown. I can't take away all their trouble, but a clown or a comedian or any kind of laughter, you relieve people for a while, So you give them that little jubilee. You give them that little, you take away the stress for a little while momentarily. So I decided, no, my clown name is Jubilee, So this is all just kind of little leading up. So I was being pulled toward this Sabbath rest that I kept reading about in Leviticus, that it will be a Sabbath for you. The land will rest, the animals will rest. And I am in the 7th year now, and the Jubilee is this cycle of 7 sevens. And I was in the 7th year of being a Jehovah's Witness, and I was exhausted, I was frustrated, I was depressed, I was angry. I just wanted rest. And so God begins to call me Jubilee. It's like I thought it was, So he'd given me the sign in the wall. He'd sent me out for pizza to meet that man who I later found out his name was Sparky, so he gave me the spark. He'd given me the name Jubilee, and all of this was in place before I was out of the watchtower. Then we went on a vacation. This was while I was faded, very confused, and we went out to South Dakota. And because there's a lot of Native American culture out there, I brought along the book Black Elk Speaks. I had always wanted to read it, and it's kind of Indian prophecy. And so I'm reading this, and it's talking about after these different battles, and it says, and then the Heyoka came in. I'm like, what is that? And I'm reading about it. I'm like, they had clowns. I'm like, that's what a Heyoka is, They were sent in to be contrary, because contrary makes us laugh, like instead of washing with water and drying off with a towel, it's you wash with the towel and dry off with the water. They were everything opposite, and they were to lighten the mood of the the wounded and those who had lost the battle, and they were sent in for that purpose. And I thought about every culture has its clowns, and so I was just kind of thrilled, wow, the Heyoka. And so that was just a vacation in South Dakota. And Heyokas, I looked up more about it, and they're actually part of the medicine man thing. They're healers. So clowns are healers. I made that connection. And guess where my Jesus healing came from? It came from South Dakota. I began to email with a pastor in South Dakota. So that's when I started to untangle the doctrine. So this whole thing. So the clown thing and South Dakota is just all these connections. So I was nearing my final end with the watchtower. I was home. I was faded. And I'd like to read to you. I'm big on reading journal entries. October 13th, 2004, so that's 2 months before I was disfellowshipped, I had written this in my journal. I was writing about how none of us measure up. I felt so inadequate. None of us are going to make it into the paradise because it's all based on our works and stuff. And I wrote, I try to grab hold of what I'm good at. God blessed me from the beginning with an artistic talent, and I'll use it. And although I suffer these tears now, I yearn to relieve others with laughter. I want to be a clown. I cannot help anyone with preaching, but I can make someone laugh for a moment, perhaps. And I ended that journal entry that day with, if you're there, God, help us. So that is a prayer. Well, later that day, elders showed up at my door. And that is what eventually led to my judicial hearings in which I was disfellowshipped. So I find that interesting that I actually wrote that out. I want to be a clown. God help us. And so I like to think of, that scripture where it says God is opening his hand and satisfying the desire of every living thing. Think about what did God open his hand to you? Do you know what it was in his hand for me? It was a cream pie. It was that was on my bucket list. Ever since I was a little kid, I wanted to get in a pie fight, and it happened. And I've been in several now. So that's, think God's opening his hand. What does he open his hand to you and to you and to you? What is it you're desiring? So I was eventually disfellowshipped. And what have I write here? Looking back, he was rescuing me. But at that time, it was really hard. So it wasn't like I was smiling and happy at that time. I was very depressed, very confused, angry, and didn't understand why is this happening, which is so true. When God is moving you and transitioning, you're like, why is this happening? I don't know why I have to go through this. But the night that I knew that they were announcing my disfellowshipping, so that was December of 2004. I was laying in bed, and as a Jehovah's Witness, everything is so scheduled. You know what to do on Tuesday and Thursday and Sunday, and you even know the clock. I remember that took a while. I'd look at the clock and go, it's meeting night, what do I do? And you have to fill your time with something, So I'm laying in bed. I could not fathom my life. I wanted to be a clown, but I really just couldn't fathom a life outside of the organization. And I'm watching the clock, and I'm like, okay, they're singing now. Okay, at a certain time, I was like, okay, it's announced. I'm now a disfellowship person. Nobody there is ever going to talk to me. I'm an apostate, and you just feel that darkness, and I'm just laying, and I don't even know if God hears my prayers, but I'm still praying, and I just had this what now? What's my life going to be? Am I even going to live? I thought a lot of suicidal thoughts, and I'm just doing this, what now? And I felt this warm peace come over me, and a word ran through me, and I'd never experienced that before. And the word was silly. And at the time, I just thought, okay, one day I'm going to look back on this and see how silly they are. And that's true. But I think it meant a lot more. And recently, I found out, I was reading a book written by a clown, and I did not know that the origin of the word silly actually means blessed. Blessed and innocent. So God was also confirming me, you're gonna laugh at this one day, but you know what? You are blessed and you are innocent. That garbage back there, that don't carry that, So so I begin that. The word silly. So 6 months later, I began, because that was December of 2004. So I began the year of 2005 as a disfellowship person. So I'm still feeling this, And my sister even commented, I went to her son's wedding that year, and she just looked back at the picture. She goes, "You look awful." like I know, look at that. I had dark circles under my eyes. I just had that, just didn't have that shine, She goes, "You look awful." But that same year was the year, 6 months after my disfellowshipping, I was at a week-long clown camp. My husband had dropped me off, and he was looking around at all that was happening and people were coming. I met people from Australia, Japan. I loved the clowns from Japan, Malaysia. They were coming from all over. There was over 300 clowns there, and in the United States. And lucky me, I live a half hour away, and I stayed at the dorms. You don't get any sleep, so it was almost like a new cult. For a week long, you don't know what's going on in the outside world, and you're sleep deprived, but it was like hilarity every day. And some days you're in full makeup, some days you're halfway, and you sign up for these classes, and it was such a good vacation, because then I didn't have to cook or clean. You're staying at dorms and you're eating in the cafeteria and everything. And so I wasn't ready really I didn't admit to anyone there that I'm a former Jehovah's Witness. I still felt that shame, like I'm going to drag Jehovah's organization down if I say anything. But I told my roommate, who they had signed me to, that, my name was Jubilee and I got it out of Leviticus. Well, guess who they assigned me to as a roommate? This perky little Christian clown, and her name was Twinkles, and she'd lay in bed at night, and Jubilee, is it okay if I pray for the both of us? And I'd hear this prayer, Jesus, please watch over me and Jubilee, and I'm like, So I had prayer for an entire week there, so it was great, and she was so sweet to me. We didn't keep in touch, but I always remember Twinkles, the clown. She had prayed for me, having no idea that there was this recently disfellowshipped witness in the bed next to her. So at that clown camp, I got in the pie fight for the very first time. When I came home, my husband said I was glowing, and he had not seen that in a very long time. He had seen this confused, strict, no, we can't light birthday candles, no, we can't put up Christmas lights, all that stuff. And he just saw how, my whole demeanor was lighter, and I was so excited, and there was such creativity. It's like, oh, and I want to do this and that, and, I joined the clown club, Winona Clown Club. I get home, and actually I joined it right before I went, and that's where Sparky the Clown was. I said, do you remember me? I met you in the pizza place and all that stuff, so it was great. So I had found a little bit of my identity again. Okay, I already said I looked awful in 2005. Got to repeat that. So a benefit here, and this is... I started writing too much about everybody's individual gifts, and that's a whole other talk because I was going way overboard. But God was extracting out of me, you're an artist, you're a clown, be that. And I see online a lot when people, they're recently disfellowshipped, a question that comes up a lot is, how do you, meet new people, and how do you start your life, And I always say, well, why not take a class or join a club of something that you're interested in? If you're interested in bugs, find some group that, likes to look at bugs, or join a gym, whatever your thing is. I said, I joined a clown club. What ends up happening is you meet people that are like-minded, So it was good for me, plus that scheduling thing that, Thursdays was meeting night. Well, now I had once a month Thursday clown club meetings. So it's a distraction. You're not thinking, I should be at the meeting, And Saturday and Sundays, those are parade days. So I poured myself in the clown club right away, Now I'm a little more balanced, but I wanted to do every parade, because it was helping me. It was helping me not think so much about my life as a witness. So I had some new focus. And I was renewing my mind. I know the scriptures. I don't want to take anything away from Jesus here, but I was renewing my mind to think positively again, because we don't realize how much we focus on everything's negative. You will take the same story that someone says, oh, well, that was a blessing, a car accident, let's say, well, that was a blessing. You only came out with a scar. When you're a witness, you're like, well, yeah, because death and destruction, and you hang on to every negativity of it. And so my mind was being renewed because I was looking for humor in every situation. Like, I'm going to make a joke out of this, which sometimes I get out of hand with. And I have to, Okay, so pray for me again. So my mind was being renewed. I had a new schedule. And so this was all part of that healing before I could really grapple with the doctrinal and all that. And I was actually experiencing Proverbs 17:22, a joyful heart is a good healer. So laughter truly is the best medicine. And so it was kind of like my first experience. When you're Jehovah Witness, here I'm telling you all this. It's like I wasn't really experiencing the love of God. I could talk about the love of God. I was experiencing this medicine, like this laughter, this joy is really healing me. And And I'm sure most of us have heard different, the medical community affirms that and stuff. And I came across an article of, they had done an experiment with movies. Took one group and showed them a stressful, scary, depressing movie and monitored their blood flow and all that. And then someone that would watch a humorous and lighthearted movie, and it said the blood flow was significantly reduced by about 35% in those who watched the stressful film. But the blood flow significantly increased by about 22% in the volunteers who watched the funny movie. So they're saying that laughter and joy may reduce the risk of heart disease because it's that restricting of blood flow. And when you think about that, the life is in the blood and all that, you can bring all that in, that we are to be joyful people. I mean, that's all over the Bible, and that Jesus said, I give you my joy, I want you to have the abundance of joy. And I was really beginning to experience that joy, tapping into that Spirit of God before I really understood who he was, So the healing balm was working, and that then led the open flow to begin talking to that pastor that I mentioned in South Dakota, where I really feel like God was identifying this is where your healing is going to come from. The Heyoka is that connection. So through that emailing relationship, I really learned who Jesus was, and he broke the chains, and I began to proclaim him as my deliverer online, talking to people, here I am, this new Christian, and my testimony was relieving others. So I just kept seeing all this, wow, so cool how God relieves people in all these different ways. And as I realized what happened to me, through those years spent in the Watchtower, I understood I'd been given a great gift. I could minister to other hurting people, not just through the temporary yet necessary relief of laughter as Jubilee the clown, but in a far deeper way, a far lasting way. I could share Jesus as my Jubilee rest. Yeah. And the spirit of joy was guiding both my cleaning business, my clowning, and this new life in Christ. After Jesus was tempted in the wilderness, he returned to Galilee, and he taught in their synagogues. He came to Nazareth. Nazareth is where he was brought up. So he returned. And you hear that of every, when you hear of an alcoholic and he gets healed, where does he go? He goes back to the alcoholics and ministers. I just think that circle is so interesting, that Jesus goes back into Galilee after his temptation into the synagogues in Nazareth, and he begins to read from the scroll of Isaiah. That's what they handed him. And so I want to read that from, actually I printed it out, yeah. He stands up and he reads from the scroll of Isaiah, and it's what we know as Isaiah 61 now, but this is in Luke chapter 4, beginning in verse 18. He says, "The Spirit of the Lord is on me, because he has anointed me to preach good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to release the oppressed." And then he concluded with, "to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." And that's when it dawned on me. That's when I understood, he's making a reference back to Leviticus 25. And so I was just struck by this. And so Jesus was actually attributing to himself that Jubilee rest. And all that sign was there. It was like this powerful moment. He was proclaiming the liberty and stuff, but now I realize I've been proclaiming liberty to the prisoners of the Watchtower and pointing the way to Christ, who is the continual Jubilee, giving sight to the blind and the oppressed. And so God gave me the name Jubilee before I was really able to understand it. And as Jubilee cleaners, I liberated my clients from housework. As Jubilee the clown, I liberate people momentarily from their stress. But all the while, Jesus was actually proving himself to be my Jubilee. Amen. Is that powerful? Woo! So in 2013, at the conference in Pennsylvania, I met somebody who looked a lot like me back in 2005. You know, and she stood up, and on this like Friday morning, as we passed the mic, and we say who we are, and she stood up, and just her whole demeanor. My name is Sharon. I'm an ex-witness. And I was just drawn, like, I got to go hug that woman, because she was just down, and I could identify with that. I remember being that woman. Well, by the end of the weekend, she was not so downcast, because everyone loved on her. She heard the talks. These conferences are important. By the end of the weekend, I thought, she's funny. We were already goofing around, like, this woman has a sense of humor. And so that was exciting to me, because sometimes people that goof around a little too much are not real understood in church. Where are the clowns? Sometimes Sharon and I talk about this. We get this a lot. People watch us and they go, and you're a Christian? It's like, you bet. So when she made her first trip to Wisconsin, she came to my home. We had talked a lot on the phone. We became friends. And so she came out to visit me. I said, well, what would you like to do? What would you like to see? And one of the things, I'd say the most important thing, she said, I want a clown. I want to be a clown. I'm like, oh, I'll find us an event, and I have bins of clothes and wigs you can look through. And so, yeah, we clowned together on that first trip that she came. Now, last year, on the way to this conference, I said, you know what? Let's do a road trip. We'll camp along the way. I want you to see Circus World Museum, and we're going to go to the Big Top Parade in Baraboo. It's huge. They got giraffes and elephants. It's not a little local parade. It's a circus parade. And, we're going to have fun. We're going to camp there, and then we'll come to Missouri. And like, yeah. And she goes, can I be a clown? I said, I want to take a break from clowning. I want to watch the parade. And, come on. So we kind of did a halfway clown. I didn't want to bring all the makeup. Plus, I was in my little Toyota Yaris, like, well, that's extra clothes, that's extra makeup, all that stuff. So we got up and we put on a little bit of stuff, and we had a blast, because we were watching the parade, but we kind of worked the crowds before and after, and she played with the little ketchup thing. She was squirting people with, it's this little fake ketchup thing, and I was like drawing caricatures while she was playing along with that. I was, making a caricature of them, and then I just give it to them. So we were just blessing people, and we just had a blast. Well, then when we sat down to watch the parade, somebody hadn't occupied their lawn chair next to me. So of course, as I always carry in my pocket, I brought my dentures. As some of you know, I like to put them in church offering baskets, at several churches. And so I said, Sharon, like, I'll put the teeth there. So I put the teeth next to the lawn chair, and then we just kind of wait to see who occupies it. And this gentleman comes up, and he's real serious. He just, like, picks them up, looks at him, and goes, are these yours? And so Sharon, of course, goes, oh, you found them, so she's goofing around. So I'm sitting next to this guy. I learned he's a local, and his name is Dale. And I said, we're camping in the area. I said, by the way, we want to find a church to go to here tomorrow on Sunday. What do you recommend? He goes, oh, well, I hope you come to my church. I go to Walnut Hill Bible Church, and explains where it is. Oh, okay, we'll give that a try. Well, we get there, and we're in the parking lot still at that point, and we're walking toward the door, and this woman spots Sharon and says, were you a clown yesterday? Were you at the parade? She goes, yeah. She goes, you spread so much joy. And she hugged her and stuff, and it was just great. Then we walk into the church, and a guy comes up to me. Were you at the parade yesterday? I said, yes, I was. He goes, you were so funny. And I said, yes, some guy named Dale sent us here. I can't remember his last name, but he said he had a son that used to live above the toy store. And he goes, yeah, that's me. And I find out he's the worship leader, right? So everyone was just so welcoming at this church, and we find out, boy, we hit the jackpot, because remember, we've been camping, so that's like granola bars and warm bottled water, and they say, and today's our church picnic and baptism. We're like, so we go, which takes place at Devil's Lake, Wisconsin Dells. And so this was all last year, right? And we got to testify because people were, so you girls you're on your way to Missouri for an ex-Jehovah's Witness conference. And so we're telling them all about our life as witnesses and, this ministry and all that. So, and we witness all these baptisms in the lake and eat a lot of good food. And it was great. And so Dale and I kept in touch through email. And, here and there. And so prior to this trip, he writes, hey, I'll save a seat for you girls at the parade. And I said, yeah, we'll see you on Sunday, but we're not going to be spectators at the parade because this year we are in the parade. Bucket list. Not only, and their theme this year was the 60s, so we were hippie clowns. I carried a can of peas and sang, all we are saying is give peas a chance. Yeah, that was bad. So it was fun, but also we didn't just walk the parade. We got to ride. In my local area, we have a grocery store called Festival Foods. And when I see their float at the local parades, it's a giant shopping cart. It's actually a little hot rod. A guy below is driving it, and there's this huge shopping cart. And I found out through a clown friend they're looking to fill the shopping cart with clowns. Are you interested? So we got to ride in the shopping cart. So there's a video out there from the parade because they videotaped the whole parade, and I can't wait to see what we look like. So that was our trip this year. And again, we got to go to the church picnic. We have a home church in Baraboo, Wisconsin, Walnut Hills, high Walnut Hills. And, my phone, I got to read. Okay, I forgot to bring it up. But anyways, I got an email because while we were at their church service on Sunday, I was on this side, and then Sharon, and then Dale, who we met through the teeth. I thought, oh, the collection plate's coming. So I could hear his chuckle, but as those plates went, I heard laugh after laugh behind me. I'm like, look it, God answered that prayer. Did I not pray? Let us walk in and spread an atmosphere of joy. Yeah. So it was great. So I get this email from Pastor Dave Hutchins, and it was hilarious because it said, we so enjoyed, seeing you and your friend again this year. But our church secretary is going to be pressing charges and suing you because not only did you give the teeth, you took them back. And we're pretty sure that Indian giving is not only illegal, but racist. And it's like a hilarious email. Like, this guy's got a sense of humor. So it was wonderful. Where am I? Ta-da. So a little bit about laughter, something to think about in the Bible. I used to think about this as a JW, like, where is the sense of humor of God in the Bible? Like, I want to know, I want to meet a God of laughter. And you're concentrating on so much serious stuff. When you're a witness, it's all about the wrath of God. And you see Jesus, welcoming the children. There's moments where it's like, where is the laughter of God? Think about Abraham. He was 99 years old when God told him he was going to have children, and he laughed, right? He's like, because of course, I know what 99-year-old men are like. This doesn't happen. In Genesis 17, it tells us Abraham laughed. Now think about that. Who do you easily laugh with? Your friends or your enemies? And just the fact that Abraham laughed tells us a little bit about the relationship that he already had with God. I believe God was a good-humored God. He could take that. And I think he knew Abraham's going to laugh. He's going to get a kick out of this one, So there's a friendship there. And then later when Sarah laughed, and she even named Isaac, which means laughter. And I love this, what she said in Genesis 21:6. God has brought me laughter, and everyone who hears about this will laugh with me. And so think about this. When we read, I am the God of Abraham, I am the God of Isaac, I am the God of Jacob. If Isaac means laughter, he's saying, I am the God of laughter. Amen. So, After the trip here, favorite part. Oh, after Sharon and I got home from our trip, somehow we ended up in Iowa at one point, but we won't go there. After we got home from our trip to Baraboo, to Bonterry, I asked her of that whole trip, what was your favorite part? And she said, being a clown. Yeah. So the God of laughter put us together. You know, I think that's cool because we share that bond, not only as ex-witnesses, not only as Christian sisters, but we don't annoy each other the way we annoy other people. We can't get away with, like, people are like, oh, put away the teeth, Julie, okay? You know, and she knows I don't know if I'm schizophrenic or what, but I fall in and out of character a lot, and I can't get rid of my accents. And how many characters can you fit in, Julie? And so anyways, we were in the parade. Okay, yeah, watch that. Okay. So I'm going to close this up. I want to leave you with, I don't know if any of you ever heard of Hal Roach. He's an Irish comedian, and I'm going to condense this, but I love what he says here. It's about a smile. And I first want to say that we know that God likes to multiply, right? He's go forth and multiply. We know when Jesus broke the fish and loaves, you know, it multiplied. I always see God's like, wow, he really likes multiplying. And I identify with this, what Hal Roach said about a smile, because I see smiles as multiplying, because when you smile, guess what? Other people usually smile. So he says, a smile. It costs nothing, but it creates much. It enriches those who receive without impoverishing those who give. It cannot be begged, borrowed, or stolen, for it is something that is of no earthly good to anyone until it is given away. And when your friends are too tired to give you a smile, why not give them one of yours? For nobody needs a smile so much as those who have none left to give. And so that is why I believe that with Jehovah's Witnesses who are so downcast and, yes, show up at conferences, sometimes just like, oh, you know, sometimes you can't just come right at full force with, let me tell you about Jesus, you know, but you can still spread an atmosphere of joy. You can give them a smile. Thank you. And later, if you'd like to look at the book that Sharon put together called The Idiot's Guide to Idiocity, it's very in-depth,